Welcome, Coach Robbie.
Welcome. It's February 18th, year 2021. Welcome aboard. This is the Crushing Iron Podcast, episode 454.
53, I think.
Is it 53?
Yeah.
Well,
I caught you off guard with that.
You did. You
entrance.
had a quick intro. Usually we have a 35-minute discussion on what podcasts are really on today, but you kind of jumped the gun, so I was just kind of swinging like a blindfolded swinging at a piñata.
I can't wait for that song sometimes.
Yeah, I know you're jonesing for it. Which, you know what? I hope you were jonesing for it too. We hope you are having an awesome day. We hope you have power, first and foremost. We know a lot of you are snowed under, getting a lot of unseasonable cold weather and ice and snow. And I know my mom sent me a text this morning, like 4 more inches in Nashville, and her driveway is like totally covered. She's afraid to like walk to the mailbox because she might slip and fall. She lives by herself. And I was like, Mom, just stay inside, live off pretzels and applesauce like you pretty much always do anyway, and just survive. Be there until the end of the week. So hope you're doing well, staying safe. I know a lot of you are probably struggling, as I've had a lot of athletes that have a whole lot of red right now, and this is just one more vote.
Add me to that.
Yeah, this is also one more vote for dumb trainers that don't need a plug-in, that don't need electricity. They just ride. But we thank you for tuning in today. For your first time joining us, we appreciate it. We know you have a lot of opportunities out there in the podcast universe, and also those that are triathlon-related podcasts. And that's what we are. We're a triathlon-related podcast. We don't shove triathlon down your throat 24/7 with tips and hacks and the best of how to complete your T1 in 38 seconds. But we just sit back and have an open, honest discussion. That's what we do. We do race recaps, race previews. Oftentimes we will go in depth on swim, bike, and run training. We'll have on the occasional guests. Sometimes, like today, we'll pop into our Facebook group, which is Crushing Iron Group. You can search that, answer one simple question, and we will let you in. But that's it. Mike and I, as both best friends, coaches, and athletes ourselves, have been doing this for a long time. We started this podcast just to kind of have a conversation, connect, and hopefully connect with you, as we've been doing for 5 years now, and 452 other podcasts that Mike has done an outstanding job of outlining and making sure that they are easy to kind of navigate and figure out what you. Okay, for a second there, sorry, I looked over. Mike's been having some issues with his shoulder. And he's got his C26 Wadi jacket on, and I glanced over quickly, and I swear to God, I thought you had on a wrist brace. And I was like, I was like, I'm done. I'm done. Today's podcast is over with. I'm walking out. You have not listened to the very final. I can't do it with all the braces. But it's like one of those little thumb sleeves things. He was like trying out. Is this the first time you've worn that jacket?
It's pretty close.
No, I was going to say the first time. It looks brand new. He came in looking svelte today. That's what we do. We try to have an open, honest discussion. We have no sponsors. We have no ads. We have one agenda, and that's to keep you happy and healthy in your endurance sports journey.
Going to those, departments now at like Walgreens, and I look for braces. It's just like that's just what you do when you get older. Yeah. It's like, what do they have? Is there some kind of I've been looking for like a compression sleeve that goes over the shoulder or something like that.
Are we gonna open every podcast now with your shoulder issues? Because I gotta say,
I'm sorry, dude. I make fun. I think it's funny because I don't know. I just like to be kind of.
Because I always say, like, one of our athletes texted me, and I think he said he texted you. We're talking about Ramley. Yeah. And he said, we get done talking about a podcast about diving into the pain, and you're over here talking about your mouse shoulder.
I know. That was pretty good. I have to admit that. I know it is such a weird contradiction that, but that's why I get so mad at myself when I can't push through these silly little things. But
pain is relative, and cold is relative. You're out there. I'm out here basically freezing my butt off, and you're like, "Hey, dude, just come sit in the balcony with me in my shirtless in the 30." I'm like, "No, dude, I'm good."
I went 5 minutes last night in the
sleep. Did you really?
At like 11
It was. It came, like I went to bed last night around 9:30, which is late for me.
I was gonna say.
And watching a bit of a Netflix show, yeah. And I did email you back. You're like, "Whoa, what's he doing?" You're like, "I'm gonna ghost him real quick. There's no way he's gonna get this in the morning." I was like, "Bam, I'm gonna get you back." But it is. Pain is relative, and our conversations are a lot of time relative. That's what we do. We're definitely not a podcast where we try to shove facts down your throat. We're not experts. We're not professionals. We're just experienced in life and in triathlon. That's what we kind of do, is try to articulate that in a way where you can consume it and make it your own. So today we decided to pop into our Facebook group and see if we can get some topics today. And right off the bat, I think you'll like this one, Mike. Sam Browning asks, which coaches from all sports do you and Mike draw the most inspiration and insight from, and why?
All right, you want to go first?
And I'll let you have the go here. I mean, are there any that you even like? I mean, all the Wisconsin coaches, okay, that have been successful.
This is going to come completely out of the left field.
All right, is this a baseball manager?
No.
Okay, let me hear it.
Although I have one of those too. But when I was growing up, and I'm not an NFL guy now, you know that, right?
Oh, I know.
And a lot of people from Wisconsin, because I'm from Wisconsin, are going to get mad at this. But when I was a kid, my best friend had just moved into the neighborhood in the 70s. And he was a big Viking. He was from Minnesota. He was a big Viking fan. And the Vikings were great in the 70s, although they lost like 5 Super Bowls. But I was sort of a Vikings fan when I was a kid.
Wasn't their defense incredible? Like the Purple People Eaters?
Yeah.
I wasn't born then, but I
Tarkington and, all that. Fran Tarkington and Chuck Foreman and all that stuff. But anyway, so I was into the Vikings. And if you remember, Bud Grant was their coach. And speaking of this, Jason, speaking of mouse shoulders, Jason Ramley, they used to play outside. And it was great because he wouldn't let them have those heaters or any of that kind of stuff. And you'd often watch games up in Minnesota, and they'd have like huge snow piles on the side of the field, and they'd just be standing there. And I don't even know if he let them wear jackets half the time. I mean, the guy was just like let's be tough all the time. Mm-hmm. And I always just resonated with that for some reason. And as far as coaching goes, strategy wise, I don't necessarily know much about the guy, but I just know he had kind of that grizzly,
blue collar
kind of thing. And that's just kind of, I really appreciate that kind of stuff.
The 70s, huh? I'll take your word for the coach because I have no idea. I mean, I feel like I did pretty well knowing they're the Purple People Eaters. I mean, that was my thing. For me, I've got a few. I mean, I will say as triathlon related or triathlon coaches go, Joel Filiol and Paul Souza are easily the two that I have followed and read the most about. They used to have a podcast that they did together that didn't last very long. I think they kind of, we're coaching like a whole squad of like professional elite athletes. Like this is kind of time consuming, but they had a high performance podcast that was incredibly great. I don't even know if it's still on iTunes or not, but it was unbelievable to listen to, and just listen to them talk, and then how very simplistic they are about the strategy they use in terms of like they appreciate the data, but they go a lot, mainly a lot of them go off RPE, and they run a lot, they bike smart, and then they also appreciate swimming, and that's a lot of my swimming approach with our athletes has come from Joe Filiol specifically. If you look up, I think you can just like Google Joe Filiol's like 10 things or 10 or 20 things you should swim, and a lot of them are just like basically like keep it simple, like pool buoy, paddles, band, that's it. Like get away the fins, give away a kickboard, stop doing so many drills. Like it's just very simple, and yet you're like, oh, well, that doesn't make sense, but what about kicking faster? Well, his athletes are always like he is the best ITU coach on the planet, like period. If you're not familiar with what ITU is, it's sprint distance, Olympic distance, Olympic level athletes. He is the best coach out there. Paul Souza coaches also an enormous amount of ITU athletes that are very well established. And then also he's the coach of Paula Findlay, who just won Daytona, Challenge Daytona. So both very, very accomplished. That's kind of where I've always gotten a little bit of my inspiration from in philosophy and approach. It's always just kind of made sense to me.
Yeah.
And then just coaches in general. I mean, I don't know, like professional coaches, like I haven't had a ton that I've really gravitated towards. Like I like Mike Tomlin. I think he's a player's coach. He's kind of no nonsense. I really dig the things that he has to say. And even though they are like one of my nemesis, because I'm a Lakers fan, I've always loved Greg Popovich. He's just very like black and white. I'm just gonna tell you what I'm thinking, like no matter what, And he's always seemed like he's a pretty good players coach too. Like players love playing for him. And then I will say, like, the one thing that Phil Jackson never really was like my favorite person on the planet, but one of the things I absolutely loved about his coaching style is that when every other coach would call a timeout because things were like going poorly, he would just sit there with his arms crossed and like letting him play.
Yeah,
because he just wouldn't jump the gun, and I think what he would see in that, and this is kind of something that I try to portray with the athletes that we work with is like I don't want to give you the simple answer to think it through all the time, like, or to prevent you from thinking it through, or to, I will obviously save someone from making a huge mistake, might get them injured. But when they ask me a question, I'm like, why don't you tell me why that? Because I want athletes to be, self-sufficient and think through things. The more they understand things, the more they can troubleshoot on their own, the more they're bought in. And that's what I always thought he was doing, was thinking like, hey, you guys need to figure it out, right? And learn this. I'm not always going to be able to save you. I'm not always going to have timeouts, and we're not always going to be in a predicament where we can just stop the game. Let's use this as a lesson, because it's different for them too. The same thing with athletes, because it's just, we train so much, we only have a certain number of races. He's probably thinking, hey, let's get through these, so when it comes time for playoff time, we've worked through them and learned our lessons, and then when it matters the most, we can actually, be able to do something about it. So I always appreciated that about him. When most people are like, yeah, but call a timeout. He's just like sitting there, nice and calm and collective. And I think it really also taught his players to just be like, okay, no one's going to bail us out. We're going to have to work as a unit to kind of figure this out together.
Yeah, I think I love Phil Jackson. This is a great question, Sam. I think that Phil Jackson to me was always that guy that, like, because when I was growing up, there's always this thing about, like when you think of a guy like Bobby Knight, he was just my way or the highway type guy. And I never really kind of gravitated. I appreciated that on some level. But I always appreciated Phil Jackson in the sense that I felt like, every athlete has, everybody wants to blame it on the athlete, but like everybody has their own style or their own things that they kind of resonate. When you look at a guy like Rodman versus Jordan or whatever, he can, like, the ability to sort of be flexible on, what certain athletes need. And I've always sort of taken that approach with coaching as well. I think that's so funny that, like, in that documentary when he came mid-season and he asked Michael Jordan, he's like, hey, Dennis needs a vacation. Is that cool? And he's like, he goes, just like a few days in Vegas.
Yeah.
And just any coach that would be like okay with that is just hilarious to me. But, it was like, it's like us giving, hey, you need to take a week off or none of this anymore, So, like, and there's another philosophy that I always thought about. I was like, because, like, yeah, you follow those guys, I've never really followed triathlon coaches that much. And I think
most people don't. They have no idea who they really are. Like, there's zero idea.
I had a good friend who was a singer-songwriter that I traveled around in a van with for like a year, and he was probably one of the best lyricists I ever knew, and he never listened to music. And I thought that was really funny. He always wrote songs on book. Like, he would read a book and then write a song. So it's sort of this cross-pollination thing, and I really sort of like to think about triathlon that way a lot, as you probably know. It's sort of like, how do I, translate my feeling, my experience, and my gut instincts from other sports and things that I've done in life, or just sort of that analogy thing that we always use is sort of like, because I think to me it's easier to learn something if you can kind of apply it to something that you've done in your past, and sort of like things will click like that. A good example is, this is a bad example, but it's sort of a cross train. Is like, we were in the pool, the endless pool, giving a swim analysis the other day. One of the guys, I was trying to get him to slow down his stroke and be longer and stronger, and then after a while, he said, hey, that kind of reminds me of a big gear workout. And I was like, yeah, there you go. So it's like, how can you kind of cross-pollinate different experiences and make them more understandable with what you're trying to do in the moment?
The Phil Jackson thing about Robin, you're sorry, so many people be like, that's insane. Like, no, you need to be, but it's about understanding what your players need and what what they need to get the most out of themselves, which is, obviously it's a team sport, so it's a little bit different than triathlon, but it's just the same thing with coaching. Like, you have to understand what each athlete needs, or even oftentimes, like, it's not oftentimes what they actually want. Like, an athlete might say they want one thing, like, that's not what you need. Like, you might just want that, but what you really need is this. Like, you really want to go run, but what you need is a day off. Like, or you need to be okay, snowshoeing, for 3 hours, or understanding that this is also okay. And then, when it comes to motivation, it's about, getting them to kind of do it on their own, because you're not always going to be there. You want them to be able to be self-sufficient, because that's where they feel empowered and motivated and determined and can push through things on race day. But yeah, I think, in all sports, it's really important to look at coaches across all sports, not just your own sport, in terms of how they deal with players, because it's all about people management. Like, in my opinion, coaching is like 80, 85, 90% the same across all sports. The only difference is the technical aspect of it, because it's all about working with people and it's all about getting them to do things that, they didn't think they could do or that they want to do or to achieve different things. But you have to listen and know. And that's why, like, as much as everyone wants to like push artificial intelligence and all these automated, robotic things, like they're never, ever, ever, ever going to be able to talk to a person and understand, like what they really need by looking them in the eyes or hearing them talk, or like being able to talk about what their day is like or their life is like, and the stresses that they're going, about. It's just going to be automated. You have to know the person. And so I think, and then, I think I shared this maybe a month or two ago, but Mike Tomlin now has my favorite quote as a coach, and it's "The standard is the standard, baby." And I love that quote. Like, no matter what, he was being asked about, like, the pandemic and all the challenges that coaches had with athletes. And he was like, nothing changes. The standard is the standard. Like, when in a year in a time where people, I think, continuously look for outs and excuses to kind of always have that in their pocket, he's just like, this is what we do. Like, the standard is the standard. We keep moving on. We keep doing the best we can. But no, I love that question. I don't think we've ever been asked that before.
There was one quick thing you'd said about when Phil Jackson wouldn't call a timeout. Mm-hmm. I like that a lot because I think it's important. You said that we're not experts or anything like that. We have a lot of experience and we've been around the sport. Everybody's got a lot of experience. So I think it's important that, you have the confidence to make your own decisions and figure that kind of stuff out. What's best for you? I'm always saying that. It's like, what do you want to do? What's best for you right now? Especially because this is our hobby for the most part. And as we said in the last podcast, it's a way to figure out, and get through life in a better place, using it as a tool. So how is that tool going to work for you today?
And the biggest thing, I think, and the hardest thing, I think, even for athletes and really coaches to understand is that you need to let athletes know that a lot of times that you just need to have the faith that they're right, that they're doing the right thing. A lot of times athletes are like, I just felt like doing this today, or I wanted to push it a little bit more, or I felt like doing this. I'm like, good for you. Like, you want to impact, because ultimately, and this kind of goes into the next question about RPE, is like, an athlete knows themselves better than anybody else on this planet. You know you better than anybody else does, right? Yeah. And so you have to have that faith, and you can't have that like dictatorship. You can't be, in my opinion, and there are a lot of honestly, there are a lot of coaches out there, like, their athletes are afraid to not adhere exactly or specific because they're going to let their coach down or they're going to make him mad. I'm like, you do you, right? And it's my job to support you and as it work through things as a partnership to make sure that we're heading in the right direction. A lot of times just kind of getting yourself out of your own way and making sure you're being safe, but we're doing it together. And I think a lot of times you have to have faith in your athletes to figure this out on their own, because they can ultimately know that they know what they're going to do and what is really, really the best. And that does kind of go into the second one from Rhonda Stevens. Opinions on training with RPE and using HR and or power as a secondary indicator of how hard you're working. I think I've gone through this like on many podcasts. I'm a huge RPE fan. Like, we have so many, it has become like people now think that power and heart rate and all these things are an absolute necessity in order to be able to thrive in endurance sports. Just because things are available doesn't mean they are required. And like going back to like the 70s, 80s, 90s, when no one had heard of power meters, no one had heard of GPS watches. It was your chrono. That's it. Even if they wore one or a stopwatch, like the greatest, like Olympic swimmers don't wear a watch. They go by the clock on the wall, right? They don't wear heart rate straps. They just go by the clock on the wall. They do their sets, their send-offs. That's it. They're not worried about what uploads to Training Peaks. That's it. It's very simplistic, but we have now become so obsessed with data because it's available, but it doesn't mean it's required. And in my opinion, the body, the brain is the greatest supercomputer on the planet. The greatest data that it can spit out is you knowing and you feeling what's going on. Your pace, your power, your heart rate, whatever, can lie to you, because you know what? The devices that we carry, it's so funny. Like, people always put so much stock in their devices, but it's so much like it's like the weather, right? Like, my GPS was way off today, or my powers keep dropping, but yet the next day it's like, it was perfect, right? And like, you assume it's like the weather person. Like, we never trust the weatherman, although we always look and we're like, I wonder what the weather's gonna be like tomorrow. And you're like, wait a minute, today you're talking trash about the weatherman, how they don't know jack, and the next day you're like, I wonder what the weather's gonna be like. I'm gonna dress like this. That's a lot like what like Garmin's and all like the data devices and power meters. We put so much stock in it when we want to, and then we're oftentimes reminded almost weekly how inaccurate or inconsistent that they can be. I love RP. I think bike, on the best tool I think for a gadget is definitely a power meter, just because I think it helps you run better, and it's a much more accurate depiction of like how hard you're working from an energy standpoint. But running, I'm a huge run by feel guy. I'm a huge swim by feel person as well. I mean, even biking by feel. Like a lot of athletes will just do it all. I just think knowing your body is really, really, really important, and not jumping to conclusions based on what your watch says, or, like the absolutely asinine things that your watch says, like, recovery 36 hours. Really? You know that. I'm going to need, and how and why do you know that? Or new VO2 max created by my wristwatch? No. New threshold created. Really? How? Like, it's honestly insane how much misinformation and stuff will spit out. Or your Garmin's like, hey, your half marathon predictor is this. Oh, well, I've only ran like 5 miles total, and you're telling me I can run a half marathon? It's like, it's all total whack. And so I think RPE is great. Going by it is awesome. And racing by it is even better. I think it's a skill that is being lost for most athletes, is learning how to go. And if you don't know what RPE stands for, it's rate of perceived exertion.
Well,
I know how you feel about RPE. Well,
yeah.
Whoa, I know how you used to feel,
man,
on RPE. Now, where do you stick at it?
I started from the get-go, as you know. I mean, it took maybe like 2 years for me to get a Garmin, and it was a buddy of mine gave me his old one, and I use it on the run a lot after that. But I got to say, man, it's like I really feel like RPE is the key to everything, because it's sort of like that. Get that down as a baseline. If you can really understand your effort and go by feel and really know that and know your body inside and out, then I think that's when the devices, and like for me, that's when power becomes like more valuable, and the heart rate thing, because it's just so weird, man. Like, some days I think if you own your body, and then you can use that as like a tool to get, a little more precise with things. And granted, I've never been a huge power meter guy, but that doesn't mean I don't think they're great or whatever. I don't really understand them. And for me, it's always like, I know when I'm getting, like you're saying, when I was running, I used to run with chrono all the time. And I just knew, man, like if I just knocked that last mile out, there was sort of like, I used to run on the Greenway a lot when there was mile markers or quarter mile markers and things like that. I could almost like predict to within a couple seconds of how fast I ran that particular segment. And the same with the pool. I just, I can go down and I can tell when I'm getting stronger and faster, and I can almost predict to the second, like how long that lap took or that 50 or whatever it is. And I don't know. I don't necessarily think I think it's maybe harder to get because you can't really, it's a little grayer. So I think you're not getting that sort of feedback that we're all getting used to in modern society. Like every little thing, like, how was your work day today? Well, I evaluated what you did at the computer, and you only were at 72% of your potential.
Right.
Or some weird things like that, because you can almost like put a number on everything. But I don't know. When I used to work, I was like, I had a creative job, and I had people working for me that were creative, and I used to have engineers come in the morning and go, hey, I saw your employee this morning. He was just goofing around on the internet looking at YouTube videos. And I was like, yeah, he's in the creative. He's probably looking for ideas. Like, how do you judge that? You know what I mean?
Right.
So how do I know, like, if you wake, like if you're just doing something in the morning and you wake up because it's something that makes you feel good and it'll make you perform better. You don't have to have like a watch on everything,
Mm-hmm. It's know thyself,
Yeah,
it's very hard, very hard to do. Yeah, I think we all should be. Joe Aruba, thoughts on FTP builder workouts in Zwift? No, I absolutely despise like the obsession with doing workouts to just build your FTP, unless that is your goal, unless that's your only goal, is to improve a 20-minute test. If you're a long course athlete, there are so many other things you should be worried about in terms of, and I think it's just important to know, like, I won't go too far into it, but your ability to do a 20-minute test, while it gives you kind of a benchmark and to kind of see where you're at, what kind of power you can put out through 20 minutes, it doesn't have the greatest indicator. Going back to the Garmin, it's very, very similar to what Garmin spits out for if you're a person who's only ran 6 miles, but it's going to give you a marathon prediction of this. Like, that's going to take like running like 20 miles more, right? So you have to have the durability and the endurance and the muscular endurance to be able to handle that, to be able to hold it for that long a period of time. Same thing goes for an FTP test. Like while a 20-minute test can show you glimpses of where an athlete's fitness is in terms of what they can produce for 20 minutes. And it is an important metric, but it's how you use it, right? And a lot of athletes are, and it will, not just about how you use it, but also why you're so obsessed with training for just a 20-minute test. Like I don't have workouts that are called FTP builders. We don't do blocks that are just, strictly, focused on building just your FTP, because your FTP is, for most people, all you're ever going to know is it's a 20-minute session. It's how you look at it and what you do with it. So, because your 20-minute power is meaningless if you can't sustain that percentage of it for a very, 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 very long period of time. But you can also raise it by just doing a whole lot of like zone 1, zone 2 work with a couple sprinkled, high intensity sessions. But I guess my biggest problem with FTP builder sessions like on Zwift or Trainer Road is that they absolutely hammer you into the ground because it's based on going hard all the time. And I think it's counterproductive and leads to a lot of overtraining.
It's an interesting thing because you know what, honestly, I feel like I could get on, I don't know much about Zwift. I've never done it, but I could probably get on there and crank out a pretty decent, or historically average FTP for myself this afternoon. And I haven't been riding that much. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I always feel like I have a little bit more,
Should we test that?
We could do it.
Yeah, we'll
after
see.
The Zoom call.
We'll see.
I mean, ballpark. I always just feel like I have that top end type of ability in the moment type of thing, on the bike,
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like that's just natural for me in a way. So but I don't feel like it's accurate. Like I did one a few weeks ago and I don't know what it was, but it was.
Why didn't you think it was accurate? You didn't like it?
Well, I just in relation to my fitness, thinking about doing an Ironman ride or something,
mm-hmm.
or even a half. I was like, I feel like I don't know. I feel like I just can game the system a little bit. And I know that's like the antithesis of what FTP and power is all about, right? But
not really. I think most people look at it that way because, in my opinion, like the greatest, first of all, it's 1 day and 1 hour, or
that's
less,
what I'm saying.
or 120. It's like
overall, I didn't feel like that was me.
You might think it's because it's not. It's 20 minutes. It's like one season for an athlete in professional sports. Like, let's get him a new contract. Let's see him do it next year, and the next year, and the next year, and the next year. Oftentimes, that's why you see people get big contracts and end up being absolute busts, right? Or the same thing goes for an athlete does a 20-minute FTP test or does a 1 mile. I'm like, how many long runs have you done? How many long rides have you done? Can you even ride 2 hours and feel good? Probably not. Okay, well then your 20-minute FTP is meaningless. You have to do the work to make the work worth it. Not worth it, but actually be a more accurate reflection of your actual fitness and what you're trying to accomplish. For a guy who's doing an Ironman in September and just got back into doing things, it's only an accurate depiction of your ability in that moment to hold that for 20 minutes. It has no correlation, no calculation, no predictive level of certainty on what you'll be able to do for 5.5 hours in 7 months.
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm getting at too. Is sort of like
it's pointless.
It's pointless, but also
for many people, I think it is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel like I'm in great running shape right now, but I feel like I could go out and get in the ballpark of my best 5K time. You know what I mean? But that doesn't mean anything for me training for Ironman Chattanooga.
You think you can go out and run close to your best 5K time right now? You're throwing down a lot of. Let's say I will say this.
We'll do that this afternoon too.
I was going to say you're always confident. You're definitely always confident.
But I honestly feel like it would wreck me for a week or two.
For sure.
Yeah. So, but that's my point is I feel like so if you're going to do these things, I think you should do them when you're in some kind of shape and probably on fatigue legs and everything else, just to make them a little more realistic.
Mm-hmm. I'm okay with that. We'll see how you do in your test this afternoon. Maybe we'll do them live. Clay Seal, from where you guys are, is there any correlation between successful athletes and where they tend to do most of their training by themselves or with other people? That's a great question. You know, I would say both. You know, I think a squad environment is actually becoming like really, really popular, especially for the professional and elite level athletes, because you have people that are at least very, very similar to with the same goal in mind, right? They're like, you know, to the two of the guys I talked about previously, were Sam's question, Joel Filio and Paul Souza, they both have high performance squads where the athletes work together, they push each other in the training, and then on race day, they're competing against each other. Like, but the thing about their squad and their group mentality and the culture of what they have is that they all have one goal in mind, is that's to be the best they can be at a specific distance for a specific day. The Olympics, the same distance. It's not, you know, it's not a sprint level Olympic athlete with a bunch of Ironman dudes, right? Mm-hmm. Or it's not, you know, it's or vice versa. So they have one common goal and theme. However, you can see the flip side in why running or riding with a group can be counterproductive if everyone has a totally different skill set, totally different goals, totally different fitness, and what they need to do for the day. So there's really only going to be one person that's going to be running the right pace. We're all going to go out today and run an 8-minute pace. Really? Is that really how you're all going to feel perfectly today? We're all going to be able to run a zone 2 day at 8 minutes. No, you're not. Some people are going to be pushing zone 3, zone 4. Some people are going incredibly easy. You know, I think you can use it as accountability. So I think there's just a lot of factors that go into being successful. And however, some of the most successful athletes I've ever worked with have pretty much done all their training alone. Just because as busy as most age group athletes are with a career, with a spouse, with kids, it's pretty hard to navigate scheduling a time for also someone else to work out at the same intensity for the same duration and make that work. So you're seeing a lot of athletes kind of doing their own thing, you know, just by themselves. But yeah, I mean, some of the most successful athletes I've ever worked with do the majority of their training alone. I mean, I work out infrequently with other people, but I like working out by myself. Like, I like running alone. I'm not a talker. I just don't like, it's not my thing. It's not my jam. Like, I like to run out. I like to just run. I don't want to chit chat unless I'm waving.
Yeah, that's true. I get it. I like the idea of training with other people, but being alone, like kind of like we were at run camp, you know, a lot of times, at least I ended up being that way. You kind of start out a little bit with somebody but there's something really nice about having other people out there, you know, with you. And then you just see them occasionally, say hi and whatever. I'm not a big talker. I know that's one of those things where people say, yeah, you should have conversation when you're running. That's a good zone too. But yeah,
I don't need somebody else to tell me that.
Well, there's something to be said though. I think sometimes, I think, you know, like I always talk about, like, ideally I would sort of like train with runners on the run and bikers on the bike and swimmers in the swim, and at least occasionally, because I think there's something to be said for being around people that have kind of a confidence and flow about themselves in a particular sport, and you sort of pick it up just by being there. And also they will be able to maybe drag you a little out of your comfort zone. And I think those are good things, you know? So, I think the occasional kind of, wow, I didn't realize I could run like that or whatever. I mean, I think those are important moments in training. Otherwise we sort of just get stuck in this, you know, one speed forever. And then that's the thing about, you know, what I love about a lot of our zone 2 runs or rides or whatever, they're sort of like throwing some pops, you know. It's sort of like, just remind yourself that you're still, you know, going to go a little bit faster here and there. And I do think there's a lot to be said for training with people that are a little bit better or faster.
Yeah, I agree with that. As long as you're doing it the right way, you're not always doing someone else's workout. You're
Correct.
Not doing your own.
Yeah,
for
sure.
That's what a lot of people. That's a trap a lot of athletes fall into. Sean Johnson, Swim Talk. We have like a 7 billion chats on swim. Maybe we'll put another. Maybe we'll do another how to not suck at swimming rant here in the next few weeks. We've had a lot of people coming in for the pool. I think a lot of people are getting back into the pool. So let me earmark that one for how to not suck at swimming here in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Charlene, emptying the tank. I think we went over that in terms of thinking the pain podcast. You know, I think emptying the tank is something that you have to practice. It's not something that you can like perfect each day. I think allowing yourselves opportunities to push yourself. And I think most athletes, their biggest struggle with emptying the tank is their fear of failure. And I think that's like, what if I have to stop early? And I think that's just something that we all need to kind of get out of our head, is that this constant judgment of everything we do being pass or fail or success or failure, however you want to put it. I think getting over that and being able to race free and train free and do sessions where, who cares if I blow up? Let me just kind of see, right? And empty the tank as far as I can go, and then maybe test myself to see how close I got. If I can keep doing more, then, next time I'll learn, what that kind of feels like. But you can only know that if you're going, I think, in my opinion, by feel, because your watch and your power meter is not going to be able to tell you if you're emptying the tank or not. Go back to the guy who ended up winning the Tour de France this last year, who was behind. He didn't use a power meter or a unit at all. He just freaking rode, because he was like, why does it matter? Like, if I'm either going to win or I'm going to lose, I'm not going to let my power meter tell me I'm going too fast or too slow. I'm just going to give the absolute best I can give on this last day time trial, try to win the Tour de France. Nothing else matters. And so he rode it without any information, no tech. Like, as a Tour de France, like, they're always getting numbers, always getting gadgets, they're always getting their temperature checked, heart rate, feeding, nothing. He just went out and was like, let me just absolutely empty the tank, because what do I have to lose? I mean, they're going to not go win the Tour de France, or I'm going to get second or third. Well, why do I need my power meter to tell me if I'm going to be able to succeed? I'm going to either just do my best or I'm not. But nothing is going to get in my way of the internal conversation I'm going to have with how I'm feeling and how much more do I want it. Because a lot of times, especially in the Tour de France, and a lot of athletes do this when they go run or ride, is they, in the Tour, they get information. They're like, hey, you've got 100K to go. You need to keep it at this, because they know, like, yes, you have a lot of science and a lot of data that back this up. But like in training rides, to be able to help predict it, they're like, you need to hold this range for this, because this is probably the max you could hold, not just for today, but also to be able to recover for the next day. And so they have these calculations that they'll do. So on the most important day, right, the very last day of the Tour, for their guy to win the entire thing, they went silent, right? I think they were talking through his ear, but he went nothing. They couldn't see if he was pushing too much. He couldn't see it. It was just ride. And I think they gave him like splits if you were catching him. That's all you need to hear and feel is yourself. And if you're giving your best and doing your best, then why does anything else matter? Like, you don't need the extra. I just think your watch and your power head unit, it causes too much confusion in the conversation. If you feel like you're having a great conversation with your body, because I read this all the time, and I felt like I really felt in control, and I really felt like today was easy, but my watch said different. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. You just assume that your watch would say faster or slower. What you felt was correct. Stop letting your watch run your life and tell you if it was a slow or easy or a fast workout. You just knew it because you knew what it was because you felt it. Let that be the end all be all. Stop reverting back to letting your watch and your bike unit just totally run your life and how you feel. If you felt like it was fast, or you felt like it was easy, or you felt like it was zone 2 and it was totally relaxed, and don't come back, oh, well, my watch said, no, stop. Stop it right now. You get to decide, because you know your body, and your body is the ultimate tool and the ultimate computer, in my opinion, of how you can be successful. Know that. I don't even know how I got there. But I'm passionate about it, as you can tell.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was fortunate, actually, to start with a chrono, because I was forced to do that. I don't even, like, even when I have a Garmin on sometimes now, I don't even, I forget about it. I don't even look at it, or I'm not kind of, because when I get into that look, it just tightens me up, man. I think we're all have much more in us than we understand and believe. So for me, it's always about kind of tapping that, and you don't do that by looking at a watch, or at least I don't. That feeling you're talking about is, sometimes when you just know, there's nothing better than that. But like, to be able to go, like, if you know something in your body, but you look at your watch and go, your watch is like, no, you don't. No, you don't. You're going to be like, damn it, I don't have it. I'm going too fast.
Or I better slow down.
Yeah, I better slow down. There's not a better feeling when you're out there like half. And I've never done this in a full, but in a half, I've had that feeling where I'm like, okay, I got 6 miles left, and I know that I've got this right now. So I know I have more in the tank, and it's got nothing to do with looking at the pace or any of that kind of stuff. But, when we go ride the trace, and I'd ride with a chrono, it's like that would drive people crazy. Like, because I had no idea the elevation half the time, any of this kind of stuff. But I just was like, okay, I'm riding, and can I suck it up? Can I dig deeper right now? Do I have it? Whatever. Those kind of things are just going on and on in my head. And it was really like, I think, an advantage. But like, you know, my thing with cycling, for example, has always been like, I just don't ride enough. You know, like, I think that's really kind of the point for me anyway, is that, you know, yeah, okay, would power help me or whatever. But like, I just think I've always had the right methodology with that, but I just don't, you know, for whatever reason, put in the mileage a lot of times.
You know, like the best analogy I can give is you go out to eat and you order a meal and you eat it and you're like, that was incredible. I really, really enjoyed that. Mm-hmm. How'd you make it and what was in it? And then they come back and like, oh, well, I put a little bit. And like, oh, I don't like that. You're like,
right.
What? Yeah, you do. Like you just like that actually, and then you change your mind about how much you liked, kind of like you with onions. You're like, maybe I can get back on board with the onions, you know, a little bit. You're not an onion guy. That's like this. Be satisfied, and you know what's best. Stop letting your watch tell you what's best. Or 38 hours of recovery. Oh, better take the next 30. No, just tell it to shut up and turn that stuff off. Stacey Privet, dealing with the mental side of injury. This is a good one. You know, I think it's hard. I don't think there's an easy answer for anybody. I mean, I wouldn't call myself injured right now. I definitely, as I kind of discussed on Mondays or Tuesdays podcast, I definitely kind of put myself through the ringer, albeit irresponsibly on Sunday, but I honestly don't regret it. I think the best thing you can do is just understand that it's not going to be forever. And that your career is going to last much, 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 much longer than your injury or your time off is going to be. That's also the great thing about triathlons. You have two other things you can do usually. And if you can't do two, you can at least do one. Like it's very, very, very rare that an athlete has an injury and they're like, you can't swim, bike, or run. And then you're just kind of on the shelf. Like that's, I think, everyone's biggest fear. Is just kind of hanging tough and do something, right? Stay active, I think. And then just don't jump to conclusions. And then the other biggest thing, and this is more of a physical thing, is if you think you're ready to go, wait 48 more hours. Always a steadfast rule. Like if you think you're back to healthy, wait 2 more days. No one has ever said, hey man, finished a race, coach. I think I would have PR'd today, but you know what? Remember those 2 extra days I took back when I was coming back from injury? Yeah. Should have come back sooner. Screwed me. Most oftentimes it's I came back too soon, and you come back and you work out for a day or two and you think, I'm not back. Now I got to take 2 more weeks off, and now you lost, 12 days. So be patient, which I think, again, is most athletes have a struggle with being patient or losing fitness. And that's the other thing that just like, I think either is a constant reminder as a coach of how little athletes understand about fitness and how quickly you can lose it, or you do lose it. Like, 2 days ago, I've lost all power. Really? Think through that statement real quick. I've lost all power and I've regressed in 2 days.
Come on.
That's not how it works. Like we like the dramatic effect that we have on our inability to be mentally and emotionally strong some days and to write out things that are like, that's it. I'm just getting slower. I've lost all power. Really? In 2 days? Because last week you had your best session ever, and now this week I've lost power. Like, get a grip. Like it's a good reminder for any of you who train consistently. That's not how it works. Okay? That's not how it works. You don't just lose it overnight, especially for training every single day. Be patient with it. Stacey, be patient. Yeah,
be patient with it. And I don't know, we were talking the other day about how you look at the last year and everything and this year still and how wacky it is. And I just feel like everything we're doing comes with a little bit of extra weight on it, And we were talking about that a little bit the other day and how, I'm a mental guy. Like, so if I feel the race energy or if we're at run camp, I'm kind of in a different place, I can kind of suck up through these nagging injuries or something like that. And I just think that to me, that's such an important thing is like, I think, unless you have a really good grip on the day to day, I'm just training to be healthy and happy. I think that's the ultimate goal, but like I struggle with that personally. And, you kind of get into a state of, a little bit of what's the point, like I'm dealing with these nagging injuries and I'm like, I know I got a race in September, Chattanooga full, but it's like, I'm kind of still at a what's the point sometimes with the shoulder, or whatever, it's like push through. I think that I just think that extra energy, that enthusiasm, sort of that optimism, that hope, whatever you want to call it, like it kind of helps you get through certain little things, you know. But if we're dragging in the muck and it's like a gloomy gray blanket out, like it kind of is today,
yeah.
you know, and there's the sunshine, you know, like when that sun hits in the summer and everything starts warming up and that stuff is real, you know. So I think it's a little bit difficult to deal with little injuries at this time of the year, and especially with, you know, a pandemic going on, whatever. That stuff's difficult.
Agreed.
I mean, you can just push.
Couldn't have said it better myself, man. That's a little reverse on you. We only got about 10 minutes left, so I'm actually going to skip through. We'll get back to these. We'll do the rest of these. I'll save this. We'll do the rest of these on Monday. But I want to skip down as I was kind of going through, and I thought about bringing this up earlier in the week, but Dave Cravata asks, thoughts on Ironman delaying race cancellations and pushing so many races into the fall? Athletes want to race, but does Ironman's refund policy, i.e. they don't mean we stop signing up until races are more certain to happen? It's a great question, and I think it's something that's on a lot of our minds. Andrew Messick, the CEO of Ironman, he did a video, I think earlier this week, that was emailed out and put on their Facebook page, kind of giving an update for, you know, what a lot of people are expecting. I think he did say that, you know, all their rock and roll run races were going to be moved to the fall. And then I think yesterday was when Nashville was pushed back. And so I have quite a bit to say about that.
Okay, good, because I don't.
Yeah, I figured. A couple things. One, and I was going through this with an athlete yesterday who, you know, in a couple, like, oh, Nashville's rock and roll marathon got canceled and pushed to the fall. That doesn't bode well for Chattanooga. Well, there's a lot of things I think we need to think about. One is Messick already said they were going to push all the rock and roll races to the fall already. So it's not like they just they just did that, I think, to just go ahead and do it. Running races are going to be the last that are going to happen. Sorry, like if that's what your thing, like they're just going to be, because when you think about rock and roll marathon in Nashville, it used to be, when it was a country music, it used to be like, 30,000 people, right? Smack dab. There is literally no way they could have 30,000 people right now the way they have the city going. There's no way they could do 10. There's probably no way they could do 5, right? And the demands you're going to put on a downtown metropolitan city like that, it's just not going to happen. That's why it's pushed. Versus a 1,500 to 2,000 event that's broken down and spread out like a triathlon is, much more likely to happen. I think the biggest issue athletes have, and this is, I think, important for people to, and listen, you're gonna have already thought you're gonna be either an Ironman hater, Ironman lover, or you're just gonna want to find someone to complain about. I had no issue with what he had to say. I didn't think there was really any information at all that he gave. Honestly, I don't think it's any different than what we've thought about it the last few weeks and months, which is, if they can hold one, they're going to hold one. But ultimately, they don't own these cities. They don't own these counties. We are guests, right? And so they have to be given the A-OK. And I think the biggest thing that athletes struggle with, in my opinion, you know, the refund policy is what it is. If you're bitter about it, then don't sign up with them again, right? And just don't do it. But you read the fine print. You did it. You know, I think honestly, their deferment has been more than generous in terms of, like, you can't do this race this year, so do it again next year. You don't need to pay any extra money, or defer it to any of these other races that might fit better. And obviously, there are going to be certain circumstances that don't fit into your calendar well, but they're giving you, in my opinion, tons of options in terms of being able to do it. If you don't like them, don't do it. The biggest thing, though, and I think it's so important for athletes to understand, is it incredibly frustrating to have a race canceled at the last minute? Yeah, it is. And I can tell you from personal experience, so I know how you feel. Like, I was in my car driving at 4 o'clock in the morning to go do a race that I was in probably the best shape of my life to do, en route, and then got notified that it was canceled. So I know how you feel. It is a frustration. But what he brought up, I think, is incredibly important to understand. While it's hard for you to kind of wrap your brain around mentally, you got to make travel arrangements, that you cannot un-postpone a race. You can't call a race 6 weeks out early, like everybody wants. Oh, call it 8 weeks out if you're not going to have it. You don't know. I think we've all understood and seen how fluid of a situation, you know, cities and government and local governments can be in terms of how they're dealing with certain things. And then what do you want them to do? cancel it 8 weeks out, and then things get so much better than be like, oh, see, you should have had it. Like they can't just unpostpone it. Be like, oh, you know what? Matter of fact, we're going to unpostpone that, and now we're going to put you all back into a race in 2 weeks. Is that cool? You'd be like, no, I've already made my travel. I've already canceled. I gave my time. They're waiting till the last minute to race because they want to race. So think about it that way. They can't unpostpone a race. They can't postpone it 8 weeks out, because if they do, what's going to happen? Numbers are going to drop. Cannon's going to be wide open. They're like, see, you shouldn't have done it. Or why can't we race? I'm like, you guys told us you want us to cancel it 2 months out. So we did when we can't predict the future. So now what do you want from us? It's like, I think it's a lose-lose situation. I think they're not, could their customer service be a little bit better? Absolutely, I think. But all in all, I think you have to wait till the last minute, because that's the only chance you have. Like if they cancel it too far out, then you never know what's going to happen. And if you wait too long, then people are like, well, I had things to do, and it's really going to kill me, to be disrupted like this. Like, I think they're doing the best they can, learning as they go. But again, like if you don't like what they do, don't do it. Like I don't like Nike, so I don't buy Nike stuff. I'm not like, oh, well, I've got to run in the, new Nike stuff. No, I don't. I just don't buy Nike. It's that simple. Like if you don't like it, don't do it. Like if you don't like it, you can't. Like I was talking to an athlete yesterday who's in a hotel in San Antonio because they don't have any power, and he was like, I was thinking about checking out yesterday and going home, but then I was like, you can't uncheck out. He was like, once you lose our room, you lose it, and it's sold out. Like, and then we're going to be screwed. I was like, exactly. That's the same thing with, like, you can't unpostpone a race. So while it's frustrating for everybody. We've gone through it with camps. We've gone through it with all these different things. Like it's difficult to navigate. And again, just going back to, if you don't like it, then don't sign up. Like I said before, I don't like Nike. I don't buy Nike.
You don't?
I don't like Nike. They're on my list. My list is getting longer.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll see. I mean, that's it.
Well, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, just people, I don't know, I think people look into, way too many things to honestly complain about. I'm like,
Yeah, I think you want to, there's always that question is like, you want them to kind of push through. I think everybody's sort of looking for that, like somebody to stand up like the UFC, just screw it. We're going to do it somehow. And I think that's sort of at the, because it's out of our control. So you hope that maybe Ironman can just like, find a, one of their city, whatever it is. And
because they see Challenge doing it. They did it in Daytona. They did it in Miami. But it's largely for
that was like an
professionals.
Island.
It's like you just can't do that on a mass scale and it be, something that, but here's the best way I could look at it, and then we'll close, was I frustrated I didn't get to race because, who knows what can happen in April again? Yeah, but if I look at what I paid for that race, $300 and whatever dollars, that's still out there that I can still use. I didn't waste it. What it bought me was a goal, was a focus, was something to get really, really excited for me to train for. In my opinion, for many of you, that's worth it, right? To have you continue to train, to continue to get fitter, because if you didn't have it, would you still be training as much as you are? Would you still be as excited to get up in the morning and do your workouts? Would you still be out there working hard and being positive? No, you'd probably be what a lot of people are right now, which is like, bitter and discouraged and unmotivated because they have nothing, quote unquote, to train for. But you do, right? And you did. Yes, you didn't. But so for a lot of you, I think that was worth it. It was worth the $300 or whatever it is, if it kept you motivated and kept you engaged and kept you doing something to do something good for yourself every single day, when for a lot of people, if you don't have a race, you're probably not.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah. Way. And deep down, I mean, you came back and you go, I would have crushed that, but they didn't have it, so I couldn't do it. That's what you can say to your friends.
Like, it was definitely a PR.
So, I mean, now, if it's later, then I don't know, but I was so ready. I was podium bound.
I mean, I felt good.
Yeah.
I definitely wasn't podium bound, probably, but I felt good.
I had side bets going on you.
Oh boy.
No, I didn't.
Good.
I don't bet usually. Except on myself.
Yeah, right.
Phil.
Best 5K ever today.
I'll
3
get a
o'clock.
text from Phil
Facebook
now.
Live.
I know that race is on, and it's still not quite motivating me yet.
That's right. They're all on right now. Yet you know what? Some of you still can't get off your keister.
I'm confident in that Chattanooga for sure.
You're
the
confident
full.
in your 5K.
I'm confident in the
FTP
half
test too.
Huh?
You're confident in your 5K PR this afternoon, right? Facebook Live, 3 o'clock Eastern. Time in. We'll do bets. Sub 23 or over 23 with it over under. Maybe we'll do it on the treadmill.
Oh, I could easily do it on the treadmill.
Easily. All right, tune in later.
No, because the numbers are off on there.
I mean, we can see the screen. I did my half marathon and I just used what the treadmill said. I didn't use my watch. Look at you holding your watch like it's like a...
No.
Oh, other wrist?
Yeah. The screen... No, the screen's off, dude.
Oh, it's way off.
Way off.
Treadmill. Effort and time. That's all it's about. Kind of like our podcast. 56 minutes of effort and time. We hope you enjoyed it. The questions are always fun. We appreciate you taking the time to drop those into our Facebook group. Again, if you want to be a part of that group, awesome people in there. It's Crushing Iron Group. Answer one simple question. We'll let you in. We'll get to the rest of these questions on Monday. As always, we love you. We appreciate you and you giving us our time. Stop by our website, c26triathlon.com. It's our one-stop shop for all things coaching, camps, and community, and also our club membership. That's going on through the end of this month. You can scroll down 3 and next month probably. You can scroll down 3, click on that,
end of the year.
Get more info. Yes, it's going on perpetually.
We never cancel the club membership.
We don't cancel much of anything. So hop in there, check that out.
We've kind of un-postponed the club membership.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did.
I guess that's the only thing you can do.
Yeah,
it's
but
still
we can
out
do
there.
That. Yeah, we're pretty aggressive. Do that. Check it out. If you have any questions, comments about anything and everything, you can reach out to Mike, crushingiron@gmail.com. If you have any the same for me, I am at c26coach@gmail.com.
All right, man. It was very enlightening.
Yeah, you're welcome.
See you.